And I do it ultimately by teaching a proven system with simple, practical tools that helps those leaders get crystal clear on their vision, where they're taking the organization, how they're going to get there.
Hey guys, welcome to the Beyond the Hustle podcast. We've got a special guest here and friend, Dave Feidner. Dave Feidner is a EOS implementer with an awesome background and real business success. More importantly, Dave's helped our company a ton, so I wanted to have him on as our first guest ever on this new podcast that we're doing here at Beyond the Hustle. So with that being said, Dave Feidner, thanks for coming on, man. I definitely appreciate it, and I appreciate you driving in and taking time this morning to be on our little show. To give the guests and the viewers a little bit of context on who you are and what you do, just kind of give us a little bit of a brief overview of what you're doing right now and kind of what your involvement is with the EOS.
So thank you so much. I'm honored that I'm the first guest on this. It is pretty exciting for me, particularly given the journey that I've seen you guys go through up to this point. For your audience, who am I? This is a good question. I ask myself this all the time. Mostly what I do is I help owners and leaders of entrepreneurial companies like yours get everything that they want out of their business. And I do it ultimately by teaching a proven system with simple, practical tools that helps those leaders get crystal clear on their vision, where they're taking the organization, how they're going to get there. Instill discipline and accountability through traction so that vision becomes a reality. And I help them become a healthy, functional, cohesive leadership team.
I can
and ultimately through that, get everybody else in the organization achieving those things as well.
Cool, man. So to do all those things effectively, you must have some really good like real world experience in business. Tell us a little bit about what, Dave's life looked like prior to EOS and helping entrepreneurs with their journey. What were you doing in the beginning? Where'd you kind of get started in this whole journey?
Dave's life prior to EOS was pretty miserable. Actually, no, Dave's life was pretty good. I ended up building a network of companies primarily in Europe and Latin America, and grew up to a substantial size. Ended up joining with a group of investors, buying out the original family owners of the business, and then some years later doing a big exit, selling to a very large private equity company. So my experience was literally building great companies, and it was a network of companies around the world, which basically had me living a road warrior's life for a good portion of my career.
Where'd you live? Where all were you able to live?
A large portion of the time was living in London, primarily because Europe was the big foothold. There was a period of time when I was living here, and I was traveling every single week across Europe and Latin America. So I eventually uprooted my family and just moved them to London, and we lived there for some years. And I continued to be a road warrior, but it was a lot more convenient for our family life to be there.
What was the most different thing living in London versus living in the U.S.?
Simplicity. One thing that is interesting about the U.S. versus London, for example, is just going into a supermarket and being blown away in the U.S. by the variety of choices. So that was often just the paradox of choice, whereas things tended to be a lot simpler. And
makes sense.
Yeah, there were lots of other differences. And living in a big international city, having my kids going to international schools, traveling pretty consistently. Back here at home, soccer tournaments, if the kids were, on travel teams, we might go to Cleveland. Well, over there, the soccer tournaments were in Paris, we're in Cologne, we're in Milan.
Cool. Yeah, that's
this
cool.
This was the weekend trip, was going someplace and doing all their sporting events in those locations.
So you said what was the network of companies you were building?
RGIS International was the entity, yeah.
And so how did you end up getting put in a position where, hey, we're going to have Dave focus on international growth?
Literally just by convincing the owners to let me take them global.
Sweet.
So that was literally after having gone through the exercise of helping build this business in the US to a certain scale, and then where to go next. And I was a believer that this could be taken and built overseas. There were certain clients that were sort of pushing us to doing that, because they had operations overseas. And so that was the basis for starting it. And ultimately, it became a grand adventure of building not just one company, but a series of companies.
So you kind of built a business in a business. It was kind of like a startup, right?
That's how it was.
Hey, we have this U.S. presence. We have nothing in Europe. Let's start up.
Zero. Start from zero.
So was it just you? Or did you have a team? What did that dynamic look like? Like getting started, hey, first day and wherever. So
it started off with me and then one other individual, and then gradually doing a series of transactions. So one was an acquisition in the UK, and another one was a joint venture in Brazil. Those were sort of the two foundational elements to it. There was also a small business in Mexico. From those two places, we then built it out. So ultimately, more organic growth in Latin America, more sort of combination of organic growth than buying other companies in Europe.
You were like international biz dev was kind of like your...
Yeah, talent scouting, finding companies to buy, finding people who could, build out a team in a particular country.
So how were you physically getting those contacts in these different countries? I'm sure there's like a language barrier at the time too. What was that all? Was that challenging or?
Probably the biggest challenge that I ever had from language was looking at companies in Germany and literally lining up a number to go and meet with and potentially acquire. And some of those conversations, I really needed one of my colleagues with me who could speak German fluently, because, we got into complex subjects very quickly. But for the most part, no. I mean, for the most part, my language, although I studied French and I tried to speak French, that was my second language, basically. I was relying pretty heavily on English.
Cool. So building out this international presence, I guess, were there any challenges, or what was the hardest part to kind of get from just being there and getting a couple companies to help and build this? I mean, it sounds like, it's a big company. They built a huge global presence, and it sounds like you were a big part of it. What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced pretty much as it was an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah, well, one of the challenges was buying a company and discovering that it wasn't quite what you thought it was, and having to deal with some very difficult personal challenges along the way, having to get additional funds to shore up balance sheets and things like that. There were some challenges along the way where it felt like it was about to end, that things could go very, very sideways, and it could be just one big failure, and then being able to prevail through it and come up with solutions and move forward. Lots of big obstacles along the way, but we learned from the obstacles, and the bigger they were, the more we learned, and the more we got better.
And so how long were you with that company total? How long was that?
It was most of my working career. I started in New York years ago, and just opened an office in New York City, and then eventually built out a business that was, for our entity, for our organization, the largest that existed.
Are you from New York originally, or?
I'm from New England.
New England, okay.
So New York was sort of post-college where I moved to. That was where the opportunities were.
I'm super jealous of New England fans.
I went to graduate school
Celtics.
At NYU. I was in business school, but at the same time, I was starting this other entity, this other small business in New York City, and then gradually I got good at opening those up in other parts of the U.S., and then gradually I got good at acquiring clients and building out relationships. So we got to a point where our revenue was kind of in the 500 million range.
So you're from Regis from the beginning?
Yes.
Okay.
Since I was coming out of college, that was
gotcha.
it. And then...
So they got to 500 million. What were they when you started with them?
Oh, less than 100 million.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So huge growth. Like,
Yeah, it was, there was a pretty heady growth rate for quite a few years in the 80s and 90s. And then there was a plateau, and the plateau was, okay, what do we do? You got a pretty good presence across the US. You've got all the name brands, and there were opportunities to expand into adjacent verticals, and there were opportunities to take the business international. So I chose the latter, and that's what I focused most of my attention on. And it ultimately created this completely separate entity that just represented a separate business in the UK, a separate business in France, a separate business in Brazil, a separate business in Netherlands. They were all different entities that had to be run and treated as separate businesses, but then there was an element of them that connected them. So there were shared services for, accounting and HR and finance and things like that. And then there were common clients that you had to be able to integrate across those businesses.
Cool. So coming out of Regis, you guys sell. How long do you take? Did you take some time off between that and now straight into it?
No, I was the post sale. I was still running the business, and the entity that we sold to was the Blackstone Group, large private equity company, and spent a lot of years working with those guys. Learned a lot from that experience. But you can't stay forever, right? And there were other things that were calling me to serve, and probably this particular piece, EOS, was there all along, and it finally revealed itself to me, primarily after leaving and running into companies that needed help and getting into the business of consulting and helping them, and discovering that there was this common challenge that they all had, which is they weren't getting traction in their business. And I discovered EOS, and I found in it a system that I could implement in as many of these companies as possible and achieve my objective.
So why do you do it? Do you just like doing it? Is that, or like, what is your why? Like, why do you choose to help entrepreneurs, companies grow, get their stuff together? What's your why?
It's to help as many companies as possible. Helping to build great companies is ultimately my purpose in life. This is what I enjoy doing. I loved doing it in Europe and Latin America, starting from scratch in some countries and building out an organization from scratch, or in other countries realizing that there were some competitors that it was going to be really hard to overcome, and buying them instead and building from that. So I loved it. Everything about that I loved. And this is a means for me to continue to do it as long as I can breathe.
Awesome. So did you have any like mentors along the way that really helped you? So it seems like you do some, you're not part of your, people probably look up to you as a mentor when they're hiring you as their consultant. Did you have any mentors growing up? Growing up in business, or?
Yeah, so probably more the ones that are memorable are the ones that I had during this time. One of them was a joint venture partner in Brazil, and the managing director, particularly for that business, who was an older gentleman who had seen a lot, and he mentored me. I also had a great mentor, ultimately became a business partner. And unfortunately, he passed away. But one individual particularly, who was probably my main backer in terms of what I was attempting to do, building a business in Europe and Latin America. And then ultimately, my partners, and when we took our business and sold it to Blackstone, they were great mentors for me, because that experience was a big learning experience.
I'm sure, like
buying a bunch of companies for
small mistakes are huge,
right? For low multiples, and then selling our business for a much larger multiple. That whole experience was a big learning experience for me. Yeah.
So if somebody's new trying to get into business development, or they have some experience but they're struggling getting some traction, what kind of advice would you give them?
If somebody is
Someone's really trying to, hey, I want a career in business development. I'm interested in growing a company or helping companies grow. I just don't know where to get started. I don't know anybody.
Yeah.
What advice do you give this person?
Somebody who is interested in business development and wants to do that as a role while helping organizations scale. I mean, there's 100 answers to that question. Generally, it falls into the category of just diving in and starting to do it and learn and innovate as you go.
Activity, right?
Yeah,
like,
it's
don't be
very
scared.
much, yes. And this is a hard part because it's literally, you've got to overcome your psyche and you've got to get comfortable at at being yourself.
Yeah.
And because if you're attempting to be something else, then there's going to be a lot of energy expended. But to the extent that you can find a way to be yourself and to sell and to convince people and to build relationships and make that your currency, then you can have a very, very successful career as a salesperson or as an entrepreneur.
During your career, have you had any like mindset shifts or anything that have really like helped you a ton? Like we've talked a little bit too, like I know you have, I don't want to call them rituals, but you have some rituals that you perform that kind of help. You want to talk a little bit about that? Like, hey, these are things that I do that really help me get in gear, that help me focus, that help me, because a lot of this too isn't just about making money. It's about enjoying your time and getting the freedom to do the things that you love to do. So like, what are some habits, some great habits that you've built over the years and that you feel like are great habits that help you?
Well, this is an ongoing process. So there are things that I've done along the journey, and then there are things that I'm doing right now. And the ones that are more top of mind are the things that are going on right now. So, for example, in any endeavor, but particularly in the endeavor of entrepreneurism, if you are the founder and you are building this thing, you have to find a way to get to your unique ability. Because at the beginning, you're doing a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, you know what this feels like.
See, I still deal with it.
You're doing the things that you love to do and are great at, but you're also probably spending 75% of your time doing other things. So this concept of, shall we call it, unique ability, which is a Dan Sullivan strategic coach phrase, or zone of genius, whatever it is this concept that there is this place that you are going to create an enormous amount of value from, and it is best going to come from that place where you're doing things that you love and you're great at. So it's getting into that zone. And I realize that what I teach applies to me as well. So I'm constantly working on and refining what that thing actually is. So the most recent exercise was to take work that I had done through Strategic Coach, which is a coaching program for entrepreneurs, to understand my unique ability, what I'm great at and love to do, and then also a whole host of assessments that I've taken. And I put it all into an AI bot so I could synthesize myself down and really, really be clear about what that unique ability is. So my unique ability is around curating and sharing wisdom. That's ultimately what I do. I read a lot. I collect a lot of information. I share out the information. The tools of EOS are one element. There are other pieces that I bring in as well. But primarily when I'm working with a leadership team, it's around that. So how can I manifest myself best in that scenario? So take your unique ability and then take a concept from Jim Collins, Good to Great, the concept of the flywheel. So if you understand the flywheel effect is essentially what every organization that ultimately goes from good to great adopts at some point. Clarity about how your machine works and how you can iterate that and get your flywheel going faster and faster and faster. When you're doing this really well, it feels almost seamless because you are sticking as an organization within your unique ability, and you are just gradually creating the mechanism that aggregates small improvements into some whole that creates the flywheel going faster and faster. So that's where I've been spending my time lately, is understanding my flywheel and understanding my unique ability so that I can spend more time, for example, doing things like this. This is an example of
100%.
me doing my unique ability.
Yep.
Sitting here doing a podcast, sharing this kind of information. So doing a lot more of that so that it becomes seamless, but it is a seamless component in a flywheel that continuously spins faster.
Cool. I totally 100% agree. And it's definitely a constant battle, like remembering, the 4 quadrants and like, hey, what's important, what's not important, what's urgent, what's not urgent, and just trying to delegate and get rid of that stuff, because that stuff kills me. Okay?
So it is the cadence of doing that. Yes. So you understand the tool. It's called the delegate and elevate tool, which is literally.
It's interesting you said the AI thing too. That's a lot of people can use AI to help expedite and really use AI as more of a thought leader. Because a lot of people are just using AI, I think, to like write an email, but it's like if you lean into AI as an actual thought leader.
Yes.
And ask it to help you think, it's really incredible how powerful it actually is.
Yeah. So there's lots of applications, particularly for that, to speed up your learning. In this case, this was just literally a way of taking information that I already knew about myself and distilling it down so that I could put it into a model and see how fast I can spin that flywheel.
Very cool. I asked ChatGPT, I said, it's actually crazy how accurate it is. I said, hey, ChatGPT, tell me my character flaws, because I use it a lot, so it kind of knows me. Mm-hmm. And it gives me the flaws. And then I say, okay, now be meaner. And if you tell ChatGPT to be meaner about your character flaws, it's really interesting what it'll say to you. You're like, damn, that hurt. Like, be nice, ChatGPT. But yeah, good stuff, man. What are 2 or 3 books that you would recommend people to read to kind of learn more about traction, EOS, this whole blueprint and concept?
Books to read. Well, 2, just 2 or 3.
Whatever you want.
So if I'm talking about EOS specifically, there's Traction, which is literally the Bible of EOS, the tools, the model. There's also Get a Grip for those who prefer more of a business fable narrative approach. Both of those are 2 ways to understand that. To understand how companies go from good to great, then the book Good to Great is an excellent book. For understanding that, because I think one of the challenges that I have, particularly with the work that I do, is sometimes people feel that if they need assistance, that there's something broken. And therefore, there's a resistance because they don't want to admit that there's something broken. And I guess my big insight on this is that there's nothing broken. That literally the key to understanding or building something that you truly want is to understand what is already there that is good and wholesome. That's your starting point, because from that point, then all you're doing is looking to improve and to optimize. If you start from the standpoint that something is broken, now it's all about trying to fix something. And that can be that can set you up for failure. It also puts you in a sort of a negative state of thinking in terms of black and white, when in fact there's infinite possibilities. So as much as possible, books that help you elevate your mind, because in the day-to-day of running a business, it can get pretty dark from time to time. And when it gets dark, your mind goes below the line. You start thinking about, I can either do this or do that. And the reality is there's an infinite set of choices that are available to you if you can just look at things from more of a standpoint of abundance rather than scarcity.
Totally. Yeah, I think it's super good advice for sure.
Yeah. So Traction for EOS, Good to Great to understand the underpinnings of EOS, the foundationals of what it takes to build a company and go from good to great.
So if you weren't doing what you're doing right now, what would you be doing? Is there anything else that you would be exploring, or anything else that interests you?
If I wasn't doing what I'm doing,
if you weren't an EOS implementer, like what do you think you would be doing right now?
I would be reading a ton of books. I would be reading more. If I had more time, I would read more, probably.
Would you be here? Would you be in Michigan? Would you be somewhere else?
Oh, well, so I I'm a road warrior. That's in my DNA. So travel is an important part of my life. So yes, I'm traveling. I am skiing, attempting to downhill ski every month of the year. That's been proving to be a challenge lately. But yes, it would be reading, it would be skiing, it would be developing pieces of wisdom that I can share.
So it sounds like you're doing what you want to be doing, basically. Like,
Yeah,
you just get paid to do it. It's great.
I get paid to do it.
Yeah,
This is the
that's
wonderful
awesome.
thing.
That's really cool, man.
And it suits me. I can imagine myself facilitating with leadership teams a host of different things. This piece, it gives me a lot of fulfillment right now because I can see the progress that a team makes. I can see them getting better as a team. I can see their organization getting better, and more to the point, I can see the individuals in that team living better lives, actually doing work that they love, doing it with people they love, being well compensated, having time to pursue their other passions, and ultimately getting meaning out of their life, making a big impact, whatever that happens to be for them.
Awesome. What's a one fun fact that most people don't know about Dave?
A fun fact?
Yeah, fun fact.
Well, I grew up in Burlington, Vermont, and I ended up going to the University of Vermont. And right when I was graduating, I felt the need to move, but I started to work immediately as I was coming out of in my senior year, as I was going into my first job actually for the city. And I was an analyst. And the mayor of the city was this unknown politician who probably everybody knows now, but it was Bernie Sanders.
Oh, wow.
So I worked for a short period of time and got to know him. And just by chance, because he was a brand new mayor at the time, we had to raise a lot of money to build a wood chip burning plant. So I was involved with dealing with the investment bankers and dealing with this politician who everybody knows now, but at the time he had only become mayor by 10 votes. So it was very uncertain where this thing was going to go. I knew I wasn't long for that job, and it probably wasn't right for me. I didn't think that this politician was going anywhere. So I left and moved to New York City. And then, well, he's a brand name now.
That's funny. If you had one piece of advice to give younger Dave, what would it be? Like change one thing, or hey, look out for this, or
Don't worry so much.
don't worry so much.
Don't worry so much. Yes.
It'll be all right.
Well, we get caught up a lot, and this is probably the thing that I run in with leadership teams more than anything else. It's our labeling and our beliefs about the past, how we actually process and think about those things, and the sometimes negative thoughts that come from that. And it's also preoccupation with the future and the anxiety that we create around wondering how things are actually going to transpire, as opposed to just living in the moment and being very, very focused on dealing with the thing that is in front of you. I have this favorite author of mine. I've just read another one of his books for the third time. It's The Untethered Soul of Michael Singer. And he wrote a book called The Surrender Experiment, which is just literally about living a life where you are going to be 100% present from one moment to the next. And what can occur as a result of that in your life. In his case, it's all outlined in his book, The Surrender Experiment. The reality is you can create a wonderful life for yourself as well if you can't get too uptight around anxiety about the future and your own perspective about the past.
Take it easy.
Yeah, take it easy. Make it easy. Find your means of living in flow.
So do you have any events coming up or anything that you want to give a quick shout out to? Or if somebody wants to talk to you about helping their company, how can they reach you?
Yeah, for me, in terms of connecting with me, the best way is to call me. So it's pick up the phone and call Dave 248-881-9103 is probably the best way to connect with me directly.
This thing's going to go viral. You're going to get crazy text messages.
Yeah.
I have to change the number now.
I have the infrastructure in place for managing communications in other fashions, email and things like that. The reality is I don't do my email anymore. My assistant does that. I learned that I could save a lot of time if she could just filter things down to me, and these are the things that you need to deal with. But that is me or meeting me or getting to know me. Okay. It's primarily through the phone. In terms of events that I'm supporting that are coming up, I sponsor the Detroit chapter of EO, the Entrepreneurs Organization, which is a global organization for entrepreneurs. And that chapter is a wonderful organization. It is actually where EOS originally emerged from. Gino Wickman was the founder of EOS and a longtime EO member, one of the original members of the Detroit chapter. Is his work in that chapter that ultimately created EOS. So there is a test drive coming up for that organization on May 15th. That's being done down at the Godfrey Hotel.
Okay.
And that's from kind of like 2:00 until 7:00. That is a great opportunity for entrepreneurs who have not yet found their tribe, who are looking for a peer group of people who are going through similar things that they're going through, and they want to have a team of people around them as they are going through their entrepreneurial journey. Great organization, and I support that one, and that's coming up on May 15th at the Godfrey. I also have a number of other groups that I support and coaches that I support who do work that is adjacent to the work that I do. Sometimes it's with helping leadership teams get better at making agreements with each other. So a colleague of mine named Clayton Seltzer is doing a session on creating impeccable agreements. I got a link that I can provide for people if they're interested on just getting better at having very, very strong agreements with their colleagues.
Awesome. Is there anything else that you feel like you want to cover today that we didn't talk about? I've done my best at asking you, getting all the wisdom out of Dave. I don't really have a short period of time.
What other things? I think the big thing is from Abraham Maslow. So Abraham Maslow is probably best known for Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But one thing that Abraham Maslow recognized in that hierarchy of needs is the highest level, which is essentially self-actualization, is available for everybody. We condition ourselves to not stretch for it for a host of different reasons. But his phrase that reminds you that there is a place that you can operate at and be your very best. The quote is, what one can be, one must be. What one can be, one must be. So ponder on that. There is some greater purpose that you can achieve in your life. And it is your job as a human being to find your path and achieve it.
Love it. Cool, man. Well, thanks, Dave. And I really appreciate you coming on and being our first guest. And I appreciate everything that you've done for us at Drive and Dan. And you've been a great friend. And I consider you a mentor too. So I really appreciate it, man. And
I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys create.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.